But since we are recording, if you do speak up in the middle of the presentation, it may be something that is posted on our website at some point. So that's just a warning about the privacy piece. You may wish to turn off your video again, I'll have the presentation up most of the time, but you may wish to switch off your video for other privacy reasons. So with all that said, I'm going to start with the 10,000-foot view of public education in BC. And just thinking, there's a lot of acronyms and a lot of entities out there, and the PAC is one level, and I just want to give you a picture of where you fit in, where PACs fit in, where DPAC fits in organized education or education in BC. So I think you need to think about education in BC as organized at several levels, right? So we're all familiar with what we've got at the school. And there we've got the principal, we've got teachers, and we've got PACs, right? Parents are represented by the PACs at the school level. And PACs actually have the authority. I probably have this on another slide, but I mean, PACs are parent advisory councils. So we are there, we're not, I know a lot of focus is put on fundraising, but actually the main purpose of PACs is right in the name. We are there to advise. And so at the school level, PACs are able to advise the school on any matter relating to education at the school. And that's, you're a stakeholder there, you're allowed to advise them, and that's right in the School Act. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that a specific action needs to be taken just because a PAC says, well, we think this should happen, but you have a right as a PAC, the parents through the PAC have a right to be heard by the school. And that's a very important thing to talk about. And so there's the school level, and again, there's the principal, there's the teachers, and the parents are represented by the PAC. The next level in education in BC that's fairly relevant to us is the school district. In our case, that's the Vancouver School Board, or the VSB, and there are a number of districts throughout the province. I believe it's 60 districts throughout the province, and each district will have trustees, and so those are the people that we vote in, and each district is run by a superintendent. And at the district level, parents are represented by the DPAC, so that's our organization. And our members, our voting members, are each PAC. So at the school level, the voting members in your PACs are parents, individual parents. For the DPAC, our voting members are the 100 or so PACs that make up the VSB. And similar to PACs, which are able to advise the school on any matter relating to education at their school, DPAC is able to advise the district on any matter relating to education in the district. In fact, we're one of the only stakeholder groups that has our ability to speak to the district. It's put there, that power is put there through legislation. Many of the other stakeholder groups, the teachers and the administrators, they're also stakeholder groups, but they have their voice primarily through the voice of their contracts. So again, the PACs have a say at the school level, and the DPAC has a say at the district level. And again, the same kind of caveats apply. That is to say, we can and should tell the district where we are, what we see as issues and concerns with education in the district. So we're a stakeholder, and we can and should make our voice known. But again, it's not being able to make our voice known doesn't ensure a specific sort of action. And then the next level of education in BC is at the provincial level. So that's the Ministry of Education, and parents, and I can't necessarily go into exactly how the stakeholder groups work at the provincial level, although, I mean, I'm sure you've heard of some of them, the BCTF being one of the ones that would represent, for example, teachers at the provincial level. For us, for parents, we are represented at the provincial level by the BCCPAC. So that is the BC BC Confederation of Parent Advisory Councils. So, and they are able to advise and provide advice to the Ministry of Education at the provincial level. So that's kind of the big picture view of what all the level, or what the key levels of organization are in education in BC. And I think we're going to come back to this slide at some point later in the evening, because when we do our breakout sessions, I'd just kind of like to kind of discuss how advocacy works, and knowing that there are these levels of organization in education in BC. What level should your advocacy be targeted at for a specific issue? So that's something that we will come back to later. So a little bit more about how we're represented at the provincial level. So it's BCCPAC, it's parent representation at the provincial level. And BCCPAC is a registered nonprofit and nonpartisan charity representing parents and guardians of over 500,000 children attending public schools in the province. They're recognized by the government and education partners. As I said, they're the collective voice of the parents, and they sit on provincial committees. I can tell you that the BCCPAC exec, they're also a volunteer exec of parents just like you, and they were quite busy over the summer working with the government, or at least talking with the government and other stakeholders on the school restart plan. So that's the sort of activity that they would take part in. Here, BCCPAC is governed by a volunteer board of 9 directors elected by the membership, which consists of DPACs and PACs across the province. So again, just like you, at each level, at the school level, it's a board of volunteers, just like yourself. At the district level, it's a board of volunteers, and I'm a volunteer. And also at the provincial level, it is a board of volunteers. We do encourage PACs to consider membership in BCCPAC. They obviously don't fundraise, and memberships to BCCPAC are one of their sources of revenue. And membership is $150 per year for DPACs like ourselves, and $75 a year for PACs. And it allows you to bring representatives to attend AGM. Again, through their memberships, BCCPAC represents most of the parents in public education in BC. I'm just going to stop for half a second, and I'm going to stop periodically, mostly to catch my breath, but also to make sure that I'm not talking too fast. We'll make this slide deck available and this video available. Does anybody have any questions?
There was a question in the chat, and I think maybe it would be an interesting one, because I think it's referring to BCCPAC and whether they need to check in with us before they make official statements. So I don't know whether you can field that one, but that was in the chat.
Sure. Okay. I do see that question, and I did have this conversation. I did have this conversation actually with BCCPAC. And I guess the way I would put it is, let me instead of talking about BCCPAC, let me just talk about what DPAC does, and I'll use it as an analogy or a metaphor, or and we'll relate it to what BCCPAC does. Okay, DPAC does plenty of work on advisory committees. With the VSB. So we're asked about a lot of things. We participate in committees, we listen, we read their reports, and we provide our opinion, right? And we do that as a volunteer. Exec, and it's not the case that we go out to. It's not the case that for everything we say in a meeting that we go out to 100 or so schools and say this is what we believe. Okay, I mean, we're elected to the exec, and we're supposed to use our best judgment to represent you on those committees. Now there are some times where we will take a stance and that like an official stance, and we'll make that public. And we do need to be very careful about how we articulate that. But again, if we articulate a stance on behalf of either, if we articulate a stance on behalf of the exec, I mean, we will try to make sure that it's a clear understanding that it's the exec that are making that statement. And over the summer, I would say that BCCPAC, on behalf, again, volunteers, just like us, they're doing their best to make sure that the parent voice is heard, and they make statements on behalf of the exec that don't necessarily go down to all the members. And I would say that there are plenty of other things. There are plenty of similarities at DPAC where, for example, we will make a submission on government spending priorities, where we've taken the time to look into those issues, and we've provided our feedback, and we haven't necessarily gone out to 100 schools to just verify that statement with them. Similarly, we will often provide feedback on facilities planning in VSB because it's something that we're familiar with, we've looked into deeply, and the exec has formed an opinion. Now, that opinion can be made stronger. We feel that statements can be made stronger if they are taken to a general meeting and have a plurality of support from PACs. But it is not always going to be the case that every statement that we make as DPAC has gone to all the PACs. In some cases, the level of engagement and understanding on some topics is really it's really specific to people who have been looking at the topic for some time. I hope that answers the question. I mean, it is a conversation that I did have with BCCPAC, and I would say that I totally understood their point. There are statements that, again, DPAC, for example, will make that aren't vetted by all of our member PACs either. But again, we are elected for our experience and to represent you as best we can, and use that use that mandate that we've been given to do our best job. Hopefully that speaks to it, Tara. Okay, so I'm just gonna continue, and I'll speak about DPAC, which is the Vancouver DPAC, which I am the chair of. So DPACs, like PACs, we are constituted under the BC School Act. Each school district in BC can have one DPAC, and most of the 60 districts have one. We are fortunate to have volunteers in Vancouver that are, well, the team of DPAC, and I'm very happy to be the chair. They've been great. I've learned so much, and I think we are trying our best to move education forward in Vancouver. There are some districts where the DPAC is, they can't find the volunteers for it, and I think it is much harder to get a voice in at the district level in those areas. DPACs generally do work independently, but we do occasionally network and collaborate. And so, for example, I have recently been trying to just drum up interest, support, and information from other DPAC chairs that are local to the Lower Mainland. I've been recently in the media with regards to the reporting at Vancouver Coastal, and so it was something that I was talking to DPACs in both Richmond and West Van and North Van about, because those are the other major districts that are covered by Vancouver Coastal. So again, DPACs do have ways of contacting one another, although it's not everybody will respond to my emails, but again, we've got some connections with some of the DPACs, and that's been very helpful. So DPACs, like PACs, DPACs are required to have bylaws that govern the basic functioning of our council. So we have rules around how we hold meetings, how we carry out business, and if we have to wrap ourselves up and dissolve, how we dissolve. Hopefully that won't happen, but those bylaws need to be there. And again, the School Act gives the DPAC the power to advise the school board on any matter relating to education in the district. And again, that's important. And I think that is something that we absolutely take advantage of. And at the school level, PACs should also take advantage of. For our DPAC, lists 3 main purposes. We officially represent the parents of the school district at the district level. We foster and facilitate strong communication between parents, PACs, and the VSB. And we want to promote and support parent leadership and effective PAC governance. So doing this PAC 101 presentation is one piece of, again, providing PACs the tools to understand where they are in BC education and what rights they have and some best practices. And so how our DPAC is organized, again, we have our DPAC executive. There's 8 of us right now, and we're the official representatives of DPAC. We do a lot of, the behind the scenes work, and we attend many of the standing committees that are chaired by the VSB. When we have a general meeting, we can have those stakeholders, that is, each individual PAC has a voice, and that voice can either be their DPAC rep, that is, here's the representative from Trafalgar or Tennyson or Kitts, and they can elect a DPAC rep to speak on their behalf at our meetings, at our general meetings, or failing to elect a DPAC rep, they can send their chair or co-chair to have a voice at our general meetings. At many general meetings, at many of our general meetings, it is often discussion, and it is often simply discussion, and we'll do an informative presentation. At some of our meetings, and again, this speaks to the, doesn't DPAC need to consult with parents before they take a stance? At some of our meetings, in the past, we have had motions put forward that can be voted on by member PACs. And I would also add that somewhere in our bylaws, our member PACs can, usually the motions are brought forward by the DPAC exec, but I would also say that our bylaws do allow for member PACs to bring forward resolutions if there are enough member PACs in support of such a resolution. So with a certain amount of support, you can bring a resolution forward to be debated and voted on at our general meetings. Any parent can contact the DPAC with an issue that requires representation at the district level, and all our meetings, our general meetings and our executive meetings are open to all parents in the Vancouver School District. Our general meetings usually work like there's a small formal component where the voting might be required. Occasionally, we do have motions that can be voted on, and then we'll have a presentation. So that's how our general meetings go. Our executive meetings are a little bit more focused on a lot more focused on the district. We receive internal updates with regards to the committees the VSB committees and other committees that have had a meeting in between our meetings. So we'll receive updates from the facilities committee meeting, we'll receive updates from the finance committee meeting, and so that it's a chance for the exec to hear what's going on. And also we will receive an update from usually the superintendent, or sometimes the assistant superintendent. So the exec meetings are also open. They're very informative about the things going on in the district. And I seem to be speaking just a little bit ahead of my slides. I probably just spoke about how our executive meetings go, the update from the superintendent, and receive committee reports, and then we'll discuss education issues. I spoke to what general meetings are. Occasionally, we also host ad hoc meetings, such as our town hall meeting. So those are informational meetings that are not formal meetings, but especially since the start of COVID, we've held a large number of town hall meetings, which may take various formats, including like a Q&A, mostly a Q&A with district staff. They've been very useful and informative on those specific topics. And we have another town hall meeting just kind of on the budget process coming up later this month. The other type of DPAC meeting that we have, which we only have once a year, is the AGM. Much like every PAC, we have to have an AGM yearly where we elect new executive and elect officers. I think I've gone over this already. The DPAC is a VSB stakeholder. So in addition to the power granted by the School Act, we are considered an official stakeholder of the VSB. This was negotiated by past DPAC execs as a way to make the parent voice more relevant and continues to evolve as needs are identified. And it's a fascinating place to be in. There are definitely DPACs where they feel they don't have as strong of a connection to the district and they don't feel as able to make themselves heard. However, I would say that being a stakeholder works both ways. If we're invited to, being a stakeholder means actually attending the meetings that they have, and there are quite a few of them. I see a hand up, and I have one more slide before I have another major section, so I'll take questions at that time. Okay, so we continue to work with the VSB and senior management and the Board of Trustees, and we have regular meetings with the management team. And again, speaking to other DPACs, I know that our access to the senior management and the trustees is pretty good, and it doesn't always result in exactly what we want, but at least the lines of communication for those things are open, and that's very helpful. So as I said, it's very difficult for me to follow the chat, but this is just a kind of a break point, and I do see a hand up from Michelle.
Gord, kudos. That was an amazing structural summary there. I was just wondering about the DPAC and advocacy for smaller PACs at the BCCPAC level to ensure that they're being represented at their AGMs, especially if they can't afford the fees. Can you speak to that at all? And secondly, the Ministry of Health was missing in your structural slide, and where do you think, because especially this year, given that they're directing a lot of operations, was that a deliberate, or do you not consider them part of that structure because at the DPAC level we can't really talk to the ministry, or what are your thoughts on that?
So I've revised a number of slides in this for this year. For example, I've taken out slides that talk about social events and gatherings. That particular slide with the structure, though, I mean, that earlier slide was really intended to speak to the structure of education in BC. You're right; it is an unusual year, and they are taking direction from public health. But I could say, I could honestly say that about many places and many sectors. So it was just call it an oversight or an omission. You're right; they are taking a lot of a direction these days. Now, with regards to smaller PACs and BCCPAC, two things there. Two things there. I mean, I think that DPAC, certainly our DPAC, right? I mean, I think we are a large and diverse community. I mean, of schools, of parents, and I think that even at the district level, we know that even in a well-attended meeting like this, that we are missing pockets of the city. But it is, but knowing that we understand the kind of the whys of that. Part of that is communication, but also part of that is honestly, it's a privilege, honestly, to have time to be able to devote to this sort of activity. And so, I mean, I would just say that at DPAC, when we represent PACs to the VSB, we are cognizant of schools, of communities that have. We try to make space for those communities, and if they're not available to speak, we'll try to speak on their behalf. So I think we're cognizant about that at the district level, and I would say the same thing at the BCCPAC level. That when we as DPAC speak there, that would be one of our considerations. DPAC, when we go to BCCPAC meetings, we can also, we have offered in the past to be the proxy holder for any of our PACs that are unable to attend in person, but wish to add their weight to our voice or wish to make their own voice known there. So, and I do think that, you know, in using the collective weight of our individual memberships and knowing that, and keeping in mind that there are schools that are unrepresented there, I think that we can, you know, as best we can, try to keep the concerns of smaller PACs in mind. Does that kind of answer the question?
Absolutely, thanks.
Thank you. So now down to the PAC level. So again, this is not my title, but I think it's fair. With great power comes great responsibility. And I've already touched on the fact that PACs are constituted by the BC School Act, which gives you the responsibility to elect officers and create bylaws that govern your meetings, how business is carried out, and should you need to wind up, how a PAC will dissolve. One of the other things that should be in your bylaws, it will be how you elect a DPAC rep, that is somebody to represent your school at our meetings. And again, we know that, you know, we allow the chairs and co-chairs to come to our meetings and have a vote, but we really, really encourage you to find a DPAC rep, just to take something, just, you know, for you chairs and co-chairs, just to take something off your plate. I'm sure there's lots going on, and it's to broaden the, you know, electing a DPAC rep takes something off your plate, and it broadens the number of parents that are familiar with how everything works in your school community. And also, you know, to some extent, the responsibilities of a DPAC rep would be to come to our meetings and to report. And so that's, you know, 1 or 2 meetings a month, either the general or the executive, whichever, or both. And then to report back to your own PAC about the goings on at the district level, right? And I think that's really, really valuable, because I think I'm aware of what goes on. I was a PAC chair myself, and, you know, I'm aware that what gets talked about at PAC meetings is specific to your school, but it is really, really useful, I think, for schools and PACs to be informed about some of the bigger picture items that DPAC ends up speaking about, especially, you know, there are things that go on in the district that may not affect your school directly, but they are important issues that your school and parents should possibly be aware of. I could give you one example, and one example I might give you of that. My school is Trafalgar. We are a feeder school for Prince of Wales, and so one of the things that I've brought back, as DPAC chair, I talked to the PAC chair at my school on a fairly regular basis. And one of the things I brought back over the last couple of years is the discussion around the long-range facilities plan. Now, Trafalgar is, Trafalgar is an elementary school. Its name is not listed really is not really listed in the LRFP anywhere. It's been seismically upgraded and so on and so forth. But by bringing it back to my PAC, a lot of the parents said, wait, hold a minute. Our kids are going to PW, or I already have a child in PW. And part of the LRFP talks about Point Grey, and it talks about PW, and it talks about McGee. So by bringing things back to bringing things back from the DPAC to the PAC, you can again expose a wider array of parents to the things going on around the district, and make them aware of things that, you know, maybe it doesn't impact them right now, but you know, in a little while it could impact them, or if it doesn't impact them directly, it's related to the health of education in the district as a whole. Many of the activities that we present about are about that piece about the health of education as a whole in the district. So again, what is a PAC? I probably already used the words Parent Advisory Council earlier, and you are the collective voice of parents at a particular school as constituted through the BC School Act. So again, you should provide input to the school through a direct channel to the administration, and you know, learn about what's going on in the school. Often PACs, I know that often PACs fundraise, but I think that one of the key things that PACs are responsible for is honestly building the school community. And another thing for PACs is they should be advocates for students of the school community. It is worth noting there can only be one PAC per school, although annexes may have some annexes may have a separate PACs. I see that I have missed something here. I have forget and are not. So one thing that PACs are not, two things that PACs are not. PACs are not, I mean, we can absolutely socialize at our PAC meetings, and I would never say that you don't socialize and, you know, talk about what's going on in your life at a PAC meeting. But PACs are not fundamentally just a social club. They are there to advocate for the students and to advise the administration. And another thing, and you know, again, this is somewhere where PAC chairs should be very careful. PACs are not the forum in which to discuss individual students or staff. That is not something that you do as a PAC. That is something that should be taken up ideally with the administration privately. And I do have a couple of slides on the PAC administrator relationships, and I would ask Jeff and Kathy and Rosa to, I'll just kind of talk through this, and I'll ask them to kind of pipe in and tell you from their point of view, talk about the relationship between PACs and the administration. So from my slide deck, school administrators provide support, information, and access to the school without which PACs cannot function effectively. You should work closely, PACs should work closely with the school administration because working with them is crucial to the success of your PAC. Regular communication between the executive and administrators is important, ideally outside of meetings, because there's probably more going on than can reasonably be covered in, you know, once monthly meetings. Many PAC bylaws do include administrators as members of the PAC executive. Usually they're non-voting members of the PAC executive, and they should be included in communications as much as possible. And we recommend some of these practices to help build and maintain relationships with administrators. And again, we'll have some of the administrators speak, but we think that you should include administrators in setting the agenda and provide a regular place on the agenda for a report. So kind of an update on what's happened around the school in the last little while. Definitely PACs should keep administrators in the loop with regards to the communication. And when you work together, by providing leadership and a common voice, you can work with the parent community and administrators to kind of cut down the noise and, you know, communicate with a single voice. So that's just a couple of slides about the PAC administrator relationship. And can I turn it over to Jeff? Can I turn it over to you first?
Sure, yeah, happy to talk, and thank you very much. I really want to commend you on the presentation. Thank you so much for doing this. Really, really great information. What you have on the slides here, I would say I agree very much with. As an administrator, I've been in a variety of schools with a PAC relationship. McGee, David Thompson, Britannia, Byng, and King George. And every PAC has been very different in what it is they hope to achieve. And there's quite a range around who wants to do fundraising and who wants to focus on something else educational in the school. So, you know, when an administrator comes in, they very much have to have a good relationship so they know what the PAC and the parents want to work on and then try to facilitate that. But for me, the connection to PAC has been invaluable in terms of understanding the community, especially around issues of equity and participation. Because participation in PAC varies considerably depending on the neighborhood and the capacity of parents to get there. You know, whether or not you provide childcare, whether or not you provide dinner, whether or not you can afford to do those things, sometimes makes a difference in terms of participation. But I really like what you're doing. And I also like the notion of differentiating between things that can be expressed at the school level, and certainly administrators will pass them on, but other issues that are more of a district level consultation and DPAC can help address some of those things. So this is great. Really, really appreciate you doing it. Kathy, you want to put something in on that?
Yeah. Yeah, go, Kathy, yes. Sorry, I was muted.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I totally agree. I mean, administrators really do value the role of PAC, and making a healthy relationship between the PAC and the administrative team is so vital to just getting things happening in school and ensuring success for all students. I'm going to talk briefly about the role of the principal, because it's important, I think, that people understand the position that the principal is in. And then Rosa is going to talk a little about developing a positive relationship and how she has done that at some of her schools that she's been at. So the principal, in addition to working with teachers to plan, implement and assess the curriculum, are also committed to building a positive and inclusive learning environments in schools. There are also many managerial and operational aspects to the role that support student achievement, including communication with parents, the community, ensuring attendance, school safety for students and all staff, staffing, budget, and I could go on forever. And it's, I think, really important for parents to understand that administrators are the only member in the school community who's not a member of a union. We're working in a unionised environment, and we have to ensure that we are compliant with several collective agreements. We also have to follow legal frameworks and laws, including the School Act, BC Human Rights Code, WorkSafe, BC Food Safe, and all sorts of things. Policies, initiatives, directives from the Ministry of Education, the Vancouver Board of Trustees, and of course at the moment, Public Health. So there's a lot of things that we are not able to change and that have to be in place and that are consistent from site to site. So as you can imagine, every day is different for a school principal. I'm sure you've seen your school administrator take on many roles, but things that we're not able to do, but we can get support for, include mental health issues, legal issues, and we always work with the experts that are available in the district and in the community as needed. So that's just a little oversight as to the role that we have in schools, and quite often we have to sometimes it can be frustrating for PACs, I know, when we can't just jump ahead and get things done immediately, and because we have to ensure that we are including the voice of staff in decision making around funding and prioritising what is on the wish list, for example. But so that's just some sort of background as to how we're working in order to help you understand where we're coming from. But as I say, the clear, consistent, open communication is so vital, and God, thank you for hosting this evening and making sure we're all on the same page, because it can only benefit our students. So I'll hand over to Rosa now, and she's going to talk about developing healthy relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thanks. You guys all did a great job. And you're going to probably hear some of what Gord has already said in what it is that I'm saying. And I mean, relationships first, everything else second. We know that in life as a success factor. And so what I wanted to mention is that the way that I see PAC working is I think of it in terms of circles. You know, PAC is there to support and provide some advice to other parents, and that's a huge role, in my opinion, especially when you're working in schools that have a very active parental group. That is the biggest support that you can offer administrators. You know, taking on the role of advising and supporting other parents. The other role, that other circle, is to just be supportive of teachers. And the third is to be supportive and to provide some advice to administrators. And so what you have to decide is you have to try to figure out which circle problems or issues or ideas belong to, because what Gord had mentioned is, you know, PAC is not the place to bring things from an individual basis to those meetings, or to surprise administrators with things that haven't been discussed before. And so the best advice that I offer you is to think of, you know, is it a parent-teacher issue? Is it a parent-PAC issue? Is it a parent-admin issue? And to, you know, to help frame those conversations. When you are spoken to from parents as well, you know, obviously you're cognizant of the fact that, you know, there's so many various perspectives. And I know that if you hear so many things out there on the playground. And I so appreciate when PAC representatives come my way and say, hey, Rosa, you know, be it a phone call or be it an email or be it, you know, a meeting in the office, just saying, heads up. This is what's really ruminating out there within the community, because something is going to come my way, and for me to look into that and be thoughtful around it before it presents itself is really, really helpful. So I'd really recommend that. And the other thing is, you know, communication is so important, and I've always been lucky to be a part of meetings prior to the general meetings happening. I've always met with the PAC chairs and or table officer exec to formulate the agenda actually for the upcoming meeting. And so it's a wonderful opportunity for them to learn all the roles that we play and all the things that Kathy spoke about that we have to consider in schools when we're making decisions. It's just a really good learning opportunity when you're in that meeting together. And then I would also say that, you know, problems come our way all the time. You know, as PAC chairs and executive, you're going to get a lot of that. So, you know, it's really important for us to have a really good, positive mindset and to formulate solutions and be part of the solutions, because there always are solutions to problems, and half of the problems actually are just a lack of communication. And then finally, I want to really extend a great heartfelt thank you because PACs so support administrators, and we know it, and we want to tell you that we're recognizing you in this process. So thank you for that. And also I want to thank you on behalf of children, because you're providing the greatest gift that you have, and that's the gift of time. And so be it on an instructional level in classes or in schools and communities, or, you know, through your efforts in advocacy, we really appreciate your work. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosa, Kathy, Jeff. We do have a couple of questions in the chat, and I mean, I don't want to. Well, I would like to ask them, but you know, if you're not able to answer them right now, I will respect that, because it's just, you know, I understand that some questions can be, you know, a little bit surprises, okay, and that's sometimes uncomfortable. But I've got two questions in the chat, and let me put one to Rosa and Kathy. And that first question would be, do administrators need to approve fundraising initiatives? So, Is that a mandatory thing, or is that something that a PAC can put on by themselves, assuming that it doesn't, assuming it's something that doesn't require administrative support, is approval really required?
Kathy, or well, I think I don't think it's PAC in schools. PAC is part of the school, and administrators need to be aware of what's happening within the school, because ultimately you're representing the school in your fundraising efforts. So I'd be so surprised if you didn't pass that through an administrator. And it's not like you have to get approval, but you need to have a perspective. And it might be that I might be uncomfortable with something, a product, or, there might be some history there. So I think it's really prudent for everyone to have that open communication, because it should never be a surprise if you're choosing something to fundraise for. I should know about it.
Thank you very much. And I recognize that I didn't talk about questions earlier, so I really appreciate the answer to that. Jeff, I'll pose the other question to you.
Well, just before you do that,
yes.
Just with regard to the question you've already asked, I think the current system now is that the money, if you do a direct appeal, for example, which is where you have the most flexibility, that's where there might be some item that the principal might want to have an opinion on. That is now going through the school, and it actually is a check that has to be written by the administrator. So I would sure hope the principal approves of it, because they're going to sign a check. So I think that communication and that relationship is really, really important before that fundraising drive begins.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Especially for those direct appeals especially for those direct appeals where funds are coming in and they're expecting a tax receipt if they go through the VSB. So absolutely, you're absolutely right there. So again, just the quick question. So some PACs are asked about fundraising for certain items, such as computers. I don't know that I'm not sure I've heard of one of these directly, but I mean, beyond technology, I mean, there may be requests for items like PPE, like air purifiers. And so, if a PAC, how should a PAC deal with a request like that from administration?
Well, first of all, the PAC's not obliged to do any fundraising. So as I mentioned earlier, that varies from school to school. There are some who declare themselves as they're not fundraising. They will deal with gaming grant applications, but they're not actively fundraising. And there are lots of good reasons for that within a school community. So I think that administrators in general would respect that. I certainly hope so. But this is a question, and I think everyone knows this, around equity across the district. Some schools and neighborhoods can fundraise very, very quickly, and they do, and it's something that they do well, almost like a machine. And others don't have that capacity or maybe that interest. And in general, school administrators, as hopeful as they might be, that's not something that we would normally put upon the PAC if they're not in the business of fundraising. We have, of course, the current issue around air purifiers, and that has come up as something that the district will not supply, but they would not go against it should schools fundraise for those themselves. And, I don't know that that's really a fair comment, but it seems to be something that's happening right now. So I think, PACs aren't forced into anything. What they decide to do in terms of fundraising, and you've mentioned this before, that's not why PACs were created. And that's not what the mandate is provincially. It's not what's in the legislation. But I can tell you, for an administrator, it's wonderful when we can do good things for schools that we couldn't otherwise do. Of course, we're very excited about that. But the PAC determines what they're up to.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time this evening, and thank you for answering those questions. I know they're a bit of a surprise, but they are some of the things that come up when PACs work with administrators, and so hopefully that will help the attendees kind of like guide their responses and the relationship with their administrators. So again, thank you very much for your time this evening, all of you. Is there anything that else that you'd like to say before I move on, or?
Other than a good night, I'm going to go eat my dinner. I would like to say thank you for the invitation, and please don't hesitate to reach out to us as an association if you want something.
Mm-hmm. And also, there's never need to apologize for asking questions. That's what creates success in schools. So I think we need to be bold about going and asking questions. So anytime, Gord, you and your, anybody has questions, ask them. Administrators want to know.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night. I'm just going to move on, everybody. Thank you very much. I'm just going to move on to our section on PACs. So we've talked a little bit about how PACs are created. They're created through the School Act. We've talked a little bit about the PAC administrator relationship. It's the most important relationship probably that you can have to make your PAC successful. And PAC bylaws. So that's another thing that's PACs have to have bylaws. The School Act requires PACs to have bylaws that specify how meetings are run, how the business of the PAC is conducted, and how dissolution happens. If your school does not have bylaws, we can help. So DPAC has, DPAC is from a number of different schools, and most of those many of them may have bylaws. I've probably modified a few sets of bylaws. We have a small library of bylaws that have been donated by willing schools to serve as templates for others. And also, we are happy to keep your bylaws, a copy of your bylaws on file somewhere in our archives, so that if something happens to your filing system, or if there's a lack of continuity in your PAC exec, so a copy of those bylaws exists so they don't have to be rewritten from scratch in the future. So again, if you're comfortable, please send us a copy of your bylaws just for filing and to help other PACs. If you do not have bylaws that govern how you run your meetings and how you conduct your business, I do encourage you to get a set of bylaws. And the reason is, without a set of bylaws, sometimes issues can arise, even though things have been working tickety-boo for years and years and years. Sometimes issues can arise, and the bylaws are the way that you are often what you would look to resolve some of those issues. And so they are fairly important to have. We do recommend that PACs make their bylaws available on a website. So either something that you are hosting or something that you can use a free service for, but it's probably a good idea to make your PAC bylaws available to all parents on a website. And again, one benefit of putting your bylaws on a website is to allow it's transparency for your parents, but it's also serves as a reference for other PACs that are looking for some best practices to follow. PACs usually need the following officer roles to function: chair, treasurer, secretary. So that's pretty much the minimum. You do need a DPAC rep is nice to have to send to our meetings, and again, take some of the load off. It's an insidiously easy way to get a parent involved with the PAC. Because it's not quite as demanding as some of the other roles. It's a nice way to get started and dip your toe in the water. One reason that you usually need those three roles is pretty much for all reasonable check signing, you should require 2 signers, and one of those signers, if you're receiving a check that's made out to yourself for something that you spent money on, you as an exec spent money on, you should not be signing your own check ever, ever, ever. So those roles can be shared, and often I encourage people to share the roles. Again, it helps to make it easier for people to accept some responsibility. It broadens the number of parents in the community. And to tell you the truth, I would never have become a PAC chair if I didn't have a co-chair, right? It would have just been a very daunting it would have been a very daunting prospect to me. So for those of you that do not have a co-chair or a co-treasurer, kudos to you. But developing allowing those roles in your bylaws can be very helpful. Although to spread the work around, to make succession and transitions easier. So that's something that if you don't permit it, I would encourage you to think about it. Although it is something that you would want to be a little bit careful about when you are crafting your bylaws. PAC elections, PAC bylaws, determine how your elections happen, and they determine the rules around your officer elections, including the timing. So some PACs have their AGMs in the fall, for example, in September, and others have their AGMs in June. It is best practice to announce the election date, often as part of the AGM, as much in advance as possible, providing ample notice and enabling broad parent participation. In some bylaws, and I would actually recommend it, in some bylaws, there are some rules with regards to how far in advance that notification happens and where that notification might be posted. Now, I do note that if you're too specific in crafting your bylaws, you can run yourself into some issues. So for example, there could be some bylaws that stipulate that you need to post your election or your AGM notice in the front hallway. Well, nobody's going into a front hallway at this moment in time. It's only done by email right now. So if your bylaws are, it's good to have notification requirements in your bylaws, but it is probably a good idea to not have them too strict. The other thing I would say is for PACs to continue business, especially in the time of COVID, I would encourage you to interpret your bylaws as broadly as possible to make it possible for your PAC to function. And I think that has got to be the overriding thing, that the PAC should continue to do the work of advocacy and representing parents and bringing the community together. And you should make sure that happens, even if your bylaws say that, hey, you have to post the election notice on the front bulletin board so that all parents can see it. I mean, that's just not going to happen these days. So again, bylaws are good. Election bylaws are good. You've got to make sure those elections are, parents are well notified about the elections, but do take your bylaws with a grain of salt in these times. PAC succession planning. So here's where I'll make the pitch for people, for exec to consider joining the DPAC exec. Because one thing they say about succession planning is pretty much that should be one of the very first things that you do when you get on as a PAC exec. And I am doing that myself, and I encourage you as execs to think about that very thing, right? Some PACs, sometimes a volunteer will get into the role, and it will be very difficult for them to get out of the role, because hey, you're doing a good job, fantastic, thank you very much. But that is not a succession plan. That will lead to burnout, and it will lead to people feeling like, oh, I have to do this, but it's really hard on my family. So again, I think that you should start succession planning almost as soon as you possibly can. And part of that succession planning might be, again, the idea of co-positions, so you can start training somebody, or that more than one person has that information, so that there can be kind of a steady transition of people that's always somebody teaching and always somebody learning. Again, succession planning is something that you should do as soon as you can. And I would also encourage you to do things to make that succession planning more successful. And some part of that is writing things down. And I can tell you I can tell you from my own experience right now as DPAC chair, that has been something I've been very, very insistent on, especially for our new exec. Is there something that you're stumbling over that you're asking a question about? Please write it down so that we have a manual for execs that join later. I think it's really, really important. Again, a good manual, lots of stuff written down, it will help it will absolutely help your transitions. It will make the fear for that, that person kind of putting up their hand a little bit, saying, okay, well, maybe I could do it. If you have a good manual, if you have maybe somebody who says, yeah, I can help you with that for a few months, or even a co-treasurer, it will make that hesitation a little bit less, and it will make it easier for succession. So again, please write things down. Please start succession planning as soon as you can. And the last point there, please leave your school PAC better than when you arrived. So again, writing things down, recruiting more parents to the PAC, these are things, and bringing more parents in, these are things you can do to strengthen your school community and strengthen your PAC. So more on PAC meetings and PAC meeting best practices. Best practices. So publish an agenda, kind of what you're talking about, and the agendas don't have to be particularly elaborate. There may be some event that you're, well, in pre-COVID times, there might be some event that you're organizing. There might be an update from the chair, and there might be an update from the administration about things going on, and that's the agenda. But at least that gives parents an idea of what to expect. It's also helpful to establish an end time for the meetings. So again, parents know what to expect. They understand what time commitment they've got. Your meetings, I mean, every school is going to be different with their level of formality. And to tell you the truth, every meeting is a little bit different. This meeting is more casual because it's more of a presentation, but some meetings like your AGM will absolutely need to be more formal. So it's a good idea to have meeting rules and procedures, and kind of and that's the job of the chair, to kind of run the meeting and make sure that everything goes according to plan. And this is the point where I might look to participants, especially PAC chairs and co-chairs. One of the things that we're considering, again, this is for developing stronger PACs, is we are looking to we're looking to bring in a speaker to speak to Robert's rules a little bit, but more about how to run effective meetings. I mean, Robert's rules can be a tool used to just create a little bit of a process and to put everybody on a level playing field. But this fellow that we've talked to, he says, look, you only use a small part of the rules, and they're mainly just to put everybody on a level playing field. He takes a really practical approach to that, and he's willing to do a presentation to PAC chairs, to co-chairs, and to the DPAC exec. So can I have using the raise your hand function under the Zoom controls, and I'm not sure everybody is perfectly familiar with them, could I get a show of hands as to who might find a presentation that talked about Robert's rules and how to run an effective meeting? Who would be interested in that? And I'm going to just scroll through, looking through. Okay, I see thumbs up. I'm just scrolling through the screens of participants. I got lots of I've got now 15 hands up and probably another 12 thumbs up. So thank you very much. We have your email address from the registration for this meeting. So what we'll do is, we will, seeing as we have, a good 20, 30 people that would be interested in attending, I think that training session will be well worth it in, making PAC stronger. And so we will send out probably a doodle poll with some dates to see what the best day could be. So thank you very much. I'm going to try to, no, I don't have a lower hand. I can't lower everybody's hands. Let's see. Yeah, I can't find my lower hand control right now, so I'm just going to leave that alone for the time being, and I'm going to keep talking. Your PAC bylaws may dictate a formal meeting, your PAC bylaws may dictate a formal meeting format and agenda, but if not, this is a general idea of what you might include in a meeting. It's just a welcome. Approve the meeting agenda, approve the last meeting minutes, maybe a treasurer's report, and you would have some reports from the chair and the administration, and then new business. So that's a simple kind of a simple kind of meeting agenda, and that honestly that works for most meetings. So one thing I said earlier, in an earlier slide that I said that sometimes I thought that every meeting was different, and I think that's true. I think this is an example of a fairly informal meeting. We're just talking. Well, I'm doing most of the talking, but we are just talking, and it's a presentation. There are other meetings like your AGM or when you're voting on your budget where there may be discussion and more formality for the meeting is required. And so, again, if you're doing elections or if you're passing a budget or you're changing your bylaws, we can't stress enough in those cases for things like that, you should really look to your bylaws and make sure they're followed really carefully. I mean, just so that there are no questions afterwards. And I would, point to an example where we were updating the bylaws at my elementary school. And I mean, it was something where it was the type of notification that you had to do to change the bylaws was exactly prescribed. You have to have it this many days ahead, and it has to be at least this many voting parents, and it has to be at least this percentage of success. If you've got something like that, again, this is the example of bylaw changes. If you have something in your bylaws for something formal, budget, bylaw changes, elections, please follow those carefully. Otherwise, it could cause you problems down the road. And yes, another one on the slide that I didn't mention, but is absolutely true, is another one of those important things is the addition or removal of signing officers for banking or for banking reasons. So you want to have those. You want to have those carefully minuted so that you have a record and that you can take those to the bank and say, yes, we are taking these signers off and we are adding these signers on. So that's pretty important there. Okay, so I see it's 8:42, so I'm gonna keep moving. We have a number of slides. We have a number of slides remaining, and then hopefully we'll have time for a breakout. I have a little bit more about conducting meetings, and then we'll talk about some treasury stuff. So PAC meetings. All PAC meetings recently have been online. To my understanding, administration is basically, not allowing additional parents on school grounds, and I'd say probably with good reason. So DPAC has been having all of our meetings online, and what we've seen is really good attendance because it is possible to just, I've got the kids here, I'm just going to listen, I'm going to put myself on mute and I'm going to listen in and just, make sure I'm informed about what's going on at the district or at our school. So we've had good attendance. The online meetings it's more accessible if you have childcare issues. The kids can be, playing around, hopefully not too loudly, but they can be nearby. And I would say that technology accessibility of having an online meeting, there are some concerns. There are absolutely some concerns about access to technology, though what we are hearing from PACs is that a lot of the platforms, and I'll use Zoom as an example, are relatively accessible because of often because of the ubiquity of phones and the fact that Zoom, for example, has a phone client that you can join in on, as well as desktop requirements. So accessibility it has been okay. So and also considering it's COVID, I think that it's something that I'm sure we would like. Well, I'm sure it'll be a while. It would be nice to see smiling faces in person, but right now is probably not the time. And I've been glad to hear from PACs that accessibility as far as technology hasn't been too much of a problem. But again, that may vary from community to community. So do try to keep that in mind when you're talking about bigger decisions. One thing I would say about that we've been seeing in Zoom is the chat. It's a way for parents that might not speak up in other meetings, but it's a way for them to voice their opinion or otherwise share information. So the chat's been an interesting thing. I will have more to say about Zoom chats in just a second, but it's, again, I would leave a chat on for your meeting because there are good aspects about it, but I would talk about some of the other aspects in a bit. And lastly, I would like to note that DPAC has access to a small number of Zoom licenses that we're able to share out on behalf of and to help PACs conduct their meetings. And I think many PACs may already, through one of their parents, have access to like a Zoom Pro license, maybe a personal or something that they're able to use. And those Pro licenses normally host up to like 100 people for an unlimited time meeting or a very long meeting. So, if you have your own Pro license, that's probably good enough for an elementary school PAC. But if nobody at your school has one, please come to us. The next level up though, for the secondary school PACs, I expect a lot of requests from the secondary school PACs for help with their meetings because because the DPAC licenses, because of the volume we've got, we're able to host up to 300 people in a meeting, and that's not something that everybody has access to. So again, DPAC has a small number of licenses. We have to schedule things carefully. We're happy to help with your PAC, elementary or secondary, although it's probably more important at the secondary level because there are fewer people probably with access to a 300 seat license. One thing about the chat is, one thing I'm going to say that's on the bad part about the chat is they're really difficult to monitor and continue to host the meeting. My eyes occasionally are glancing through to the chat, so I see maybe one comment in 20, but I see a good one right at the bottom here that I'd like to bring forward. If you're not watching the chat, it might be something for you to kind of look at. But it's the suggestion, thank you, Winston, of a past chair position for the PAC. We've had a past chair position at ours, and it does absolutely help with the transition, so that that there can, if at the wish of the new PAC chair, there can be somebody there from the last exec kind of helping guide them and helping with the votes. It does certainly ease the transition. That's another way of doing it, as well as co-chairs. Again, lots of different ways to kind of assist with that succession planning, with the transition, past chairs, co-chairs, better documentation. But I do encourage you to start thinking about it yesterday. Some challenges with PAC meetings online. I've been doing most of the talking, so there's less casual interaction. I mean, I did say earlier that PACs are not a social club, but it is one part of being at PAC meetings that I'm an introvert really, but I still do miss that part of PAC meetings, that talking with other parents. Another issue with PAC meetings online is I talked about Zoom and how it's available on phones, it's available on Chromebooks, it's available on computers. Well, the thing is, they all look different. And so sometimes if somebody is having a technical challenge, it's sometimes difficult to support them, right? Because I really don't, I've so rarely used Zoom on the phone that I don't know how to do all the things that, I don't know how to do all the things that are required. So again, that's a challenge. And if you do have a lot of people that are, again, challenged with technology, variety of platforms, you might choose to change how you conduct some parts of your business to reflect that, right? So even though I asked earlier for people to use the raise hand function, I mean, that might be a difficult function to find on the iPhone or not, but if it is, try to adapt your practices so that you can most easily work with the technology and the familiarity with the technology that's available in your community. Challenges, PAC meetings online challenges. Some bylaws, I haven't seen one yet, but I suspect it's possible that some people have bylaws that prohibit online meetings. I would ignore those right now. And as I said, I would interpret your bylaws broadly to allow for your PAC to continue business as normal. I would also add that I would suggest changing those bylaws so that you don't have to continue interpreting them broadly, so that it recognizes the flexibility that's required right now. Other possible issues with PAC meetings online, unwanted visitors. So we've heard about the Zoom bombing. It hasn't happened at one of our boring meetings, but it is entirely possible. So it is something that you need to be aware of that can happen depending on how you distribute the meeting information. One thing I would say is not specific to Zoom, but for any piece of technology you're using to conduct your meeting, you as chair, or maybe whoever on your exec that is helping you run the meeting, somebody needs to be familiar with the controls of the meeting so that you can mute or block or otherwise, you know, if there's somebody who's not expected to be there, somebody who's not, you know, behaving by the norms that are accepted, so that you can stop them from participating and interrupting your meeting. I was talking about the goods and the bads of the chat. The chat can be distracting. Right now, it's very difficult for me to follow along with the chat while presenting, but I know what's happening there. So it is helpful to have more than one set of eyes on what's going on, so that if there's something that needs to be brought forward, somebody, you know, one of your other exec can stop them. It can stop and just interrupt me, for example, and say, hey, there's a question like this that needs to be answered. So far, I've been able to glance down a couple of times at the chat, but that's not always going to be possible. So again, chat is great. It allows parents who would otherwise not say a thing to actually say something, to share. It allows for like a real sharing of information that I see happening, but it can be really distracting. The other thing I would say about the other downside of online meetings is privacy. So I am not actually in Hawaii. I am actually somewhere in my basement. But I mean, you know, some people may be concerned about having their child's faces on a video, or there may be something about their background that they don't want to share with the rest of the school community. So privacy is a concern. I did speak earlier about kind of doing things like you can turn off your video, or you can turn off your video, you can turn off your sound, you know, or you can announce that you're recording or not recording, so on and so forth. Just be aware that you are on a meeting that is open to other people on the internet. So there may be some concerns that you need to be aware of. Again, I think I've talked about interpreting your bylaws to allow meeting by video, change your bylaws if necessary, familiarity with meeting controls. If you have something that you need to do in your meeting, let's say it's a formal meeting where you need a formal vote, I would take the step of early in the meeting taking an opportunity to make sure that everybody can find those controls on their device. So if using the raise hand feature is an important part of your meeting, you need to be able to, you should preview that with your attendees first, so that you know that everybody can meaningfully participate in your meeting. And one other thing is, and again, this is really hard, but maybe before and after the meeting, you could allow some time for people to mingle. It is really difficult, especially when you get a lot of participants, because it's usually one person talking at a time, but it is a part of that community. Those casual conversations are part of community building. I would also mention that there are some programs with features like breakout rooms, which we're going to hopefully try to use later, which allow you to break a large meeting into smaller meetings. One thing I would say about hosting a meeting, just from our experience with Zoom, the desktop version is easiest to use if you're hosting a meeting, because all the controls are easily available to you and easily visible. So just a few more things about PACs and best practices. PACs, I think we mentioned earlier, PACs are parents, but there's a lot of tribal knowledge that gets passed down from one set of parents to the next set of parents to the next set of parents, right? And it's useful to create a place online or otherwise, well, these days it's online. It's useful to create a place online where you can store your documents and your records and your instructions to the next PAC exec about how to run events, about how to run meetings, about what's happened before, all your treasury records. So I would strongly recommend doing this in an online environment. If you have enough parents at your school that can support this, it's helpful to have your own domain name, such as VancouverDPAC.org, but it's not necessary. There are free services that you can use using, for example, Google, that will allow you to post your minutes, your agendas, your bylaws in a way online. There are free blogging services that will allow you to do that. So even though a domain name is nice, it's not necessary. One thing I would say, this second bullet point is, and I think many of you have this already, please create a permanent PAC email address or addresses for your PAC. That way, all the correspondence that's done for PAC chairs or PAC treasurers gets passed on to the next PAC treasurer rather than using your personal email accounts. I can't say this enough. You know, again, you're trying to make this something that you can easily hand down to somebody else. So by handing them all the correspondence and all the documents and all the notes that you've ever taken, you are making it easier for you to say, yes, I'm done this job, I'm going to do something else. And you're making it easier for them to pick up the mantle from you later. These are some recommended online vendors for well-priced services, for mailing parents, for registering your domain, for having websites. I'm not going to go over them in any details. Some of these details may have changed. Again, it's useful to have a single PAC email that is inheritable all the time, and this note at the bottom. You know, if you're going to use any of these services, don't use your personal email as the login to these services. Use a PAC email that you're going to hand down. That way, the next person, you just hand them that information, and they can continue, and they have all the history of what you've done before. No personal email addresses, and make sure your PAC bylaws are posted online.
Gord, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
In terms of posting minutes online, do you recommend that they're posted on a website that anyone could access, or only people with a password can access?
Okay, so I would say that it probably depends a little bit on your community. There is a certain barrier to establish. I mean, like, to be perfectly honest, there's a certain barrier to creating a password. Creating a website with a password protected area, right? But you know, I would say, I know that there are parents that's like, my name cannot be in those minutes. I don't care what you're, I can't help. I want to help out in your community, but my name cannot be in those minutes, right? And so, my default answer is the minutes should be available in a publicly available forum. But if there are extenuating circumstances, then change your practices to do what is right for your community. So giving you the example of somebody whose name absolutely cannot be published anywhere, your choices might be, find it's going to add a barrier, but make them password protected. Or another easy way, and maybe just as effective, is just scrub that person's name from the minutes, initials only, something else. So again, I think default would be, my suggestion for default for both ease and honestly accessibility is public, but again, it's gonna vary from community to community.
Thank you.
I think just another note about PACs, and again, I recognize that it is 8:58, and I definitely want my colleague Alan to be able to talk to Treasury. I did know that a lot of treasurers are out there, so I'm gonna try to speak quickly. PACs are about building community for everybody at your school. All parents and students in our education system deserve the opportunity to participate fully, and so for PACs to be representative and effective, we have to find a way to respect the diversity among parents and students in our school communities. And being inclusive means going beyond recognizing the diversity beyond among us. It means working actively to encourage and make it possible for all parents to participate fully in all activities of the council. So let me give you a couple of practical examples. Of that. And these examples are from pre-COVID times, so my apologies. I'll have to use but use your imagination to kind of put those in those times. So one example of being inclusive would be providing childcare. There are many people that could not attend an in-person PAC meeting without childcare provided at the meeting. So find a student, find an older brother or sister that is willing to be paid to childcare. Again, that's an example from an in-person meeting. Another possible example, again, these are things that are community specific, right? But another possible example is we've seen PACs that alternate where they can, you know, it's PAC exec are volunteers too, but where they can, they alternate from a daytime meeting to an evening meeting. So, you know, recognizing that some parents are unable, you know, in some communities, some families may do shift work, right? So again, those are two concrete examples of trying to be inclusive of members in your community. Translation, that would be another of some materials. That would be another example where you're, you know, being thoughtful of the other members in your community. Major languages, enlist the help of your principal to promote your PAC, use plain language in your communications, and get your PAC to talk to other parents. That's all I'm going to say on that slide. I will make the slide deck available somehow, and this presentation will be available afterwards. Tell people about your PAC through your communication channels. Maybe it's something that your administrators can help you send out right at the start of the year. And, you know, try to get perhaps or through each classroom. Either way, try to get the word about what you do to parents. Parents who are new to your PAC want to feel welcomed. They want to feel that they can participate, and you want to make them feel good about, you know, getting to know the community more. Boosting attendance, again, some of these I did take away some bullets about social events, but I think about in-person social events, but I think many of these are still relevant. You know, boosting the attendance at meetings and other events, you need to promote them. You need to make the focus building a parent community first. Offer lots of ways to get involved. There will be some parents that, you know, they can only do things off hours, and that's what they do. But if you have enough, but there's often lots of work to do in a PAC, and if you can break things down enough, it's like they can say, I can do that between 10 p.m. at midnight. Fantastic, I'll do that. I'm helping my child. So, you know, make lots of jobs, many hands make light work. Another way to get attendance at your event is to do presentations that are educational for parents. And we have some suggestions on a following slide, or presentations like this one that are informative for parents about something that they need to know about the school community. This is a list, and again, can provide this to anybody that needs it afterwards. This is a list of some BCTF presentations that may be of interest to your, for your school community. These are free guest speakers. I don't know what the exact status of these is right now, but I would imagine that BCTF is still providing them, just in an online manner. More free guest speakers, and again, these are things that are targeted at, you know, families, parents, children. And building your PAC support network. You are not alone. There are 100-ish schools in the Vancouver School District. DPAC, there are other people in the same position that you are in, trying to navigate the same issues that you are. Yes, every school is unique, but we all have many of the same similar issues. So hopefully we'll have a chance to use the breakout rooms in just a few minutes. Hopefully I get there. But there are other places for so that you can meet people from other PACs, but also you can attend our meetings. You will see people from other PACs. There is also a Facebook group that was started just as a community thing. It's called Vancouver PAC Connection, and the DPAC exec kind of poke our heads in there, but there are lots of PAC execs that participate in that group. They ask questions, they provide feedback. I would also point you to the PACs Helping PACs in the Lower Mainland. That's a little bit, that one's obviously a little bit of a larger reach. The Vancouver one is a little bit more specific. Fundraising, I have half a slide devoted to it. And as I said, I do not think, I recognize that I've probably done my share of fundraising in the past. I do not think it should be the primary goal of PACs. And to tell you the truth, fundraising causes issues of equity in the school system. I know all parents want the best for their children, but it truly, fundraising we are buying things that honestly should be provided as part of the education system. It is frustrating. It is frustrating to me. It is something we raise to the district on a regular basis. I think that this year, when fundraising is so very limited, I think that this is the time to put pressure and say, look, this is, you know, it's been inequitable for ages, and now, before it was just a nice to have, but now it is really important for you to bring more equity to things like technology, especially since we're using so much of it to connect. So again, that's my 2 bits on fundraising. I will mention PAC to PAC. It is something that was started by a previous DPAC chair, and it is something that you can do for the community of PACs. That if your PAC happens to have extra funds, there is a way for you to donate anonymously to a less fortunate PAC, and that's a process that we facilitate, but we don't necessarily know who gets the funds. It's administrated for us by the VSB. One thing I might go back, I did want to, and I will turn this over to you, Alan, in like 1 or 2 minutes. One thing I might say about building community, I know I didn't provide a lot of concrete examples. I know that school events and social events have often been a way to build community. And to tell you the truth, I think many schools and many PACs are struggling with that. I mean, even my personal, in real life, you know, my organization is struggling with how to build culture and how to build community in a time where we cannot gather. And so I didn't have a lot of slides to that, although I did have a couple of examples I wanted to share, because I think there are good examples of things that communities are doing to support each other in these times. So I know that one school community at the start of COVID, they put a call out to parents to see who needed help and who might be able to provide support. And again, this is just parents, like families supporting families. And, you know, again, that is not fundraising. It is families helping families with what they need in a hard time. And to me, it was a wonderful example of community building. I also know that other schools are doing, for example, they're doing a donation or a drive for rain gear in this, which is especially relevant considering that fall is coming and that our children should be spending a lot more time outside in the near future. And so they're doing that as a bit of a fundraiser, but also a community building activity. Have I got that right, Krista?
Sorry, what was that?
That the rain gear, you know, winter weather drive, that's
Yes.
a fundraiser and a community builder, right?
Yeah, I mean, stuff raiser, not fundraiser. Yeah.
Sure. It is, you know, by the community, for the community, and it's a way, it's not a social event, but it's a way to bring the community together. So I just wanted to, you know, highlight those 2 examples. Again, I am personally struggling with, you know, I think we're all struggling with ways to build community. I just wanted to highlight those 2 examples, and looking for great ideas from from PACs as to, you know, what to do, how to build community again in this time that we cannot gather. So I think that is probably the last thing I wanted to say in my slides with regards to, we went over a lot. We went over BCCPAC, we went over DPAC, we went over lots of pieces of PAC meetings, PAC admin, PAC Zoom meetings, other PAC best practices. I'm sorry, I've talked very, very quickly, and I will now turn it over to Alan, who's going to talk about Treasury. And turn it over to you, Alan.
Oh, thank you, Gord. I'm probably going to be talking extraordinarily quickly as well to get through the pieces we have left in the short time. So please take this as kind of an introduction and some basic recommendations about best practices for PAC treasurers. It is a big topic, and there may be a lot of questions which I won't be able to track either as we go along here. But we do certainly have the option, if there is demand and interest, to somewhat later in this term do a full sort of Treasury 101 session as well. So if please let us know at DPAC if that's something that would be helpful to you. And now I'm trying to click on the slide deck, but not able to move it.
My apologies. You probably don't have control. So why don't
That's
you
right.
just kind of shout at me?
Okay, so yes, thank you. Great. So start with a few slides on gaming grants. All British Columbia PACs are eligible to apply for gaming grants from the province. The whole charitable gaming piece that funds a lot of different kinds of charitable organizations. Some key points to remember: the application time is between April 1st and June 30th. You need to make a report stating kind of how you've spent the money within 90 days of your fiscal year end. And the funds typically are dispersed or have been dispersed in the past around September 30th. This year, they'll be by October 30th as the gaming grant. So people have issued new guidelines saying they've focused a lot over the past months on identifying community organizations that are particularly dealing with COVID-related stuff. So they've shunted the PAC and DPAC dispersal of funds back a month than when they usually are. Typically $20 per student, and the total grant amount is based on the student enrollment in the start of the previous school year. So basically, anyone applying for a grant between April and June would have been referring to the numbers from late September or early October that were the formal enrollment figures submitted to the district by the school. PACs do need to retain management and control of their own grant funds. Can't transfer money from your gaming account to schools unless you're reimbursing the school for a purchase made on behalf of the PAC and at the PAC's request. So that does mean, we'll get into this a bit later, that you do need a separate bank account dedicated solely to gaming. Grant funds for school PACs need to be used within 36 months of receipt, so you don't have to spend all the money within a year, but you have to keep kind of your rolling balance in your reports annually to the back to gaming. Does need to show that you're not sort of building up money, that you're kind of spending stuff within the 3 years that you receive it. That does allow you to save up money over a few years for a particularly big project. Gaming grants typically are used for extracurricular benefits, and the next slide, which I'll ask Gord to gives us some examples of what's okay and what's not okay from the gaming grant criteria. So lots of eligible examples there, supporting after-school activities, so things like uniforms and equipment for sports teams, playground equipment counts, school clubs count. You can use gaming grants towards expenses for graduation ceremonies, travel within BC for student-related activities, publications, student competitions, scholarships and bursaries paid directly to students, buying emergency safety or earthquake-related supplies or equipment. Other things that were sort of in the most recent, and the link at the bottom there gives you the most recent sort of full package from gaming grants of what's eligible. Things like PAC school spirit and family engagement events, carnivals, dances, social activities, beautification for common spaces such as hallways, libraries, multi-purpose rooms, etc., posters, holiday decorations, entertainment or leisure activities for non-instructional times. I know certainly the Hudson PAC, when I was involved with them, had a whole sort of rainy day supply of stuff that kids could use at recess, and that could now be funded out of gaming, yeah, items that directly benefit students but aren't part of curriculum stuff. So ineligible stuff are really anything related to the normal curriculum. That whole principle that PACs, if they are going to take a fundraising role, aren't fundraising for stuff that is supposed to be provided by the system. Capital improvements, yeah, teacher classroom resources. The large gray area for PAC fundraising is often technology, but gaming grant is clearly you can't use your gaming grant towards any technology stuff you might be raising funds to. Extra props for the drama department, let's see, goods and services that benefit parents. That's so, for example, if your PAC was doing some parent information workshops, you would not be able to fund those out of the gaming grants. And there was a question earlier on about BCCPAC membership fees, and DPACs can use funds for that, but PACs at this point cannot. Thanks, Gord. Next slide, please. So the other piece for your gaming grant is if you are also fundraising through other events like 50-50 draws or raffles, those also require licensing through gaming. So that's a piece that the PAC executives need to pay some attention to. Again, and you would need to maintain a separate gaming account. There's some details of how that needs to be set up with checks, made out with the organization's full name on them, gaming account printed on them. You have to keep records that show the amount and purpose of each transaction, because that all gets explicitly laid out in the annual reports to gaming. Keep the records for 5 years. Everything basically, just your receipts, invoices, and then it's always a 2-signer check, much as any of your PAC accounts should have a double signer piece. Okay, thanks, Corey. Next slide, please. So some best practices around gaming. So it's good if you're thinking of how to spend the gaming grant to consult widely with not only with parents, but with your administration, your teachers, and the students for project ideas to fund that would be allowable under the rules. Because the PAC has control over the gaming account, and the school is not dispersing those monies. It's important that you sort of do everything directly out of that account, pay any vendors, so that audits would be easy to sort of establish what's going where. PAC meeting minutes should include a record of any decision regarding allocation of the gaming funds, including just usual best practice of minutes of noting, what quorum you have and how many parents are attending. I have been involved in PACs where the names typically were not recorded, but the number of parents present was. Make sure you have a copy of your bylaws to refer to should any questions come up about how things were done. And again, yes, just reiterating, if you're doing a gambling event kind of fundraising, you do need a separate gambling event license from gaming for that as well. Thanks, Greg. So we've got, so you can see a bit of the work in progress stuff on the slide deck as we're getting it ready for this evening off to the side there. As of a couple of years ago, donations to PAC through the VSB, as many of you already know, are retained and controlled by the school administration. So spending those PAC accounts held by the school, the expectation is still that these spending decisions will be made by the PAC, who will then ask the administration to disperse the funds accordingly, but it is the administrations who disperse the funds. That started out as a very confusing system through School Cash Online, where there was a drop-down menu of a few hundred items, where people were confusing through the donations page, making donations to the school as opposed to making donations to the PAC. It's now possible to get a direct link for each school. That we've got that list, or the VSB has it as well, that would allow a school PAC to give parents an option to pre-fill that School Cash Online page, so you're not wading through all the schools. You just have a much more limited number of options to choose from. You might consider, because the donations that go through School Cash Online and the receipts are issued by the school board immediately to the parents, generally the information about who has made donations and how much they are does not come back to the PAC. So if the PAC feels it's important to acknowledge gifts from parents, you might want in your instructions to parents about making donations to ask them to also separately advise the PAC that they made a donation if they would like to receive an acknowledgement. It's also important to coordinate with school administration so you get timely updates of how, say in a direct donation campaign, you would get the totals received back through online donations, because typically those totals are run at the school board kind of once a month and then communicated to the school. So it's I just coordinate with the office about the best ways of keeping sort of on track of what's coming in. It is also another piece to keep in mind. Thanks, Gord. Next slide. General best practices for Treasury. So each PAC will in effect sort of have 3 accounts, the one held by the school, then you should normally have a gaming account, and then one for unrestricted funds, clearly named so there's no confusion between them. 2 signatures on every check. The unrestricted funds pieces, for example, things like, you can't, with the gaming grant, fund your BCCPAC membership or some of your sort of just operating expenses for PAC if you're getting, sort of stationery and mailing and stuff like that. You also can't use the money in the school account for those, because that's got to be, the school has to be able to disperse it for kind of a school related purpose. So is some other account for unrestricted funds that funds come in through, say, non-receivable fundraising events, is a wise thing to have. Online banking system, I saw a bit in the chat here about that. Typically, if you have 2 signatures on your checks, it's very challenging to be able to do any online banking as well. I understand Vancity can set that up, but it's just for general security. You might want to consider limiting online bank access to reporting and read-only functions, rather than have transactions actually go through electronically. PayPal, I'm not clear myself on how that whole system works, but if you're using another system rather than simply banking, you want the account to be owned by the PAC email account, and you have 2 PAC executives with full access, not connected to anyone's personal email account. And normally, most bylaws specify that PAC officers, or all the PAC officers, are normally signatories of the bank. Good to have that you have, to make sure you have more than 2, because you certainly don't want to be signing, as I said before, your own check. You want 2, if you're a PAC executive officer with expenses, you want 2 other executive officers to be signing those checks for you.
Can I make a quick comment? Because I have a note here that says PayPal scares me.
Right.
I use PayPal. I use PayPal myself, and it was like, oh, I'm the person with this access to this email, and there are a handful of other people that could recover the password for this email, and that's a lot of money in that bank account that doesn't require 2 signatures. So that's why PayPal scares me. If you are using it, talk to me, and I would love to chat with you if just maybe to provide you that that level of concern or fear or whatever it is that you need. I mean, we used it, but I'd be happy not using it. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, I think we're close to the end. Good. Just for, really, if you want a couple of words to summarize Treasury best practices, is what you're doing transparent? And does it sort of show accountability and how the money is being spent? So you want sort of complete and transparent records. So monthly financial statements at PAC meetings published as part of the meeting minutes are I think, essential to demonstrating both of those things, both for ability to track problems if problems occur, and also is protection for the executive members that who have a lot of responsibility in this regard. So when electing a treasurer, some accounting experience is helpful, not required. It's generally doesn't require, it's more of a bookkeeping kind of position than an actual accounting position. And the treasurer, of course, is working at the guidance, with the guidance of the PAC executive and directed by decisions taken at meetings. The treasurer is not the person setting the agenda for financial stuff. Suggestion to use a low-cost community-minded bank such as Vancity or credit union, and please do ask for help if you find you're in a PAC that's struggling with some of these issues. DPAC certainly is able to connect you with people who've got who've quite possibly seen that particular set of issues before, and one of the functions of DPAC is to help with the kind of networking that can help PACs with struggles, find people who can help them with that. So transparency and clarity, yep, there it is. So thank you. Our next slide, please. Yeah, and this is the last couple of points. Some PACs, I don't know of any specifically, but some PACs opt to actually register as a charity, in which case there's quite a lot of other paperwork that needs to be taken care of. Annual filings of your information return with the Canada Revenue Agency, for example. If you do have those, good as well to document them well, store them in your online repository where you've got everything there to pass on to the next person coming on to take on the role, so that there's minimum sort of chaos in the transitions in any of the sort of fiscal part of the organization. Thanks. I think that's it for Treasury.